What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and I am here with NPL Season 6 Week 4 against the Detroit Butterfrees, coached by my good friend Iron Flash Gaming. Please do check out his channel if you haven't already. He is hardly even arguably one of the best players in draft format. He is in the discussion for the best player period in draft format, along with Gypsy King and a couple others, so definitely check him out if you do enjoy high quality draft content. Now let's just go ahead and jump into this a little bit, as I would consider Iron Flash Gaming, Anthony, to be probably one of my biggest rivals, I guess, when it comes to securing a playoff spot and eventually just playing in the playoffs. So I'm just going to say right now, I'm not going to give out many details on my team. I know he doesn't plan to either, so I just want to keep the game even as far as that is concerned. So I'm not going to go into as much detail as you normally see from me, just because of how critical the matchup is with him in the future. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to keep it pretty brief, and as a result, the video will be much shorter than it normally is. But just looking at his team, actually before I do that, I want to point out a couple transactions that I actually made on my team from last time. So the main differences you'll see are that I no longer have Whimsicott on my team. I traded that to Aberforth for Ferrothorn, which gives me some pretty nice defensive synergy that my team was somewhat lacking, but more importantly, it does give me access to another Stealth Rocker, as I was leaning on Nidoking and Metagross before, and now I have an extra option to be able to deal with that. Or to be able to do that, and just in general, I think it defensively synergizes really well with things on my team like Talonflame, Gastrodon, and etc. So, and also Azumarill for sure, as Ferrothorn plus Azumarill is pretty nice, especially in combination with a lot of other stuff on my team. So that's Ferrothorn, and then I also picked up Miss Magius for Doublade. That was a trade with Mr. Murkrow and the San Francisco Reggie Giants, so that was more or less a way to reduce the redundancy in my team, and that I would have had Ferrothorn, Doublade, and Metagross, which all relatively do the same thing. Not exactly, but they would serve similar roles in builds, so I didn't really feel the need to have all three, so I just wanted to swap my Ghost type for one that made a little bit more sense. Also, it helps my speed tiers by giving me a base 105, I believe, which is pretty nice. That reduces the drop in speed tiers from my Latias to my Nidoking from 110 to 85, and then it also gives me an extra Heal Beller, which is pretty nice, as well as just a lot of good utility, and I don't want to go into too many details on that because many of those tricks I will whip out here in future weeks. So those are the two changes you see on my roster. Let's take a look at my man Anthony's roster. So he has Kieran Black, which is Z eligible, Mew, which is Z eligible, Volcanion, Thunderous Eye, which is Z eligible, Cofagrigus, Greninja, Torrent, Snorlax, Registeel, Stunfisk, Mega Heracross, Gardevoir, and Kabutops. So just a few observations about his team. He has a lot of stuff that I can't really switch into very well if he runs the proper coverage. That said, my team really creates a lot of mind games for him, in that he has to pick and choose his coverage options very carefully if he wants to have a good matchup against my team, essentially, at team previews. So my team puts a lot of pressure on him in that regard, but his offensive threats put so much pressure on me that I have to build a certain way to make sure that I'm not overwhelmed, essentially. But like I said, not going into too many details on that. I'll only reveal what is actually revealed in the battle here, which I'll go to pretty soon. But the other big threats, just specifically the big threats on his team, the Mega Heracross I really struggled to switch into, as obviously most teams do, and losing Doublade does kind of hurt my ability to switch into Heracross. That said, if he was a Swords Dance Earthquake set, that still does a million to Doublade. I believe it also gets knockoff, so that both of those options are really good against Doublade, so that's not really a switch in either. I quite frankly don't have switch-ins, but I do have a lot of ways to revenge it, and that's obviously going to be the best way for me to deal with that in this game for sure. But just offensively, some of the things that really give me trouble are the Cofagrigus, especially because of its Mummy ability, that really harms the likes of my Azumarill. It harms the likes of my Mega Lopunny. As I lose Scrappy, I lose Huge Power, two very important abilities for sure, and unfortunately Koff is going to put a little bit of a nail in my coffin, pun intended I guess, as it comes to those two Pokemon being offensive threats. In addition to that, he does have the Volcanion, which is a perfect counter to Azumarill, unfortunately, as without it, Azumarill actually would be pretty good against his team, but unfortunately he does have that Volcanion, and that will make Azumarill's job a lot harder if that were a mon I decided to bring this week. That's all I really want to say at team preview. His team is really his draft is really built around the idea of hazard stack and really powerful offense. So basically my goal would be not to get overwhelmed and to make sure I have at least somewhat of a plan in mind as to how to deal with all these mons. Building for his team is really tough though, for sure, as building for mine is really tough for him, I imagine. So in that sense, the matchup I would say is fairly even. I was really having trouble building for him though, and you know, normally I can usually come up with something pretty good, and the team I did make, I believe it's very solid, but it's going to come down to making certain assumptions as far as what I think he's willing to bring, what I think he won't bring, and you know, that's all I'm going to say. So let's just hop on over to the battle, and as you can see, Anthony decided to bring Huron Black, Mew, Volcanion, Snorlax, Gardevoir, and Mega Heracross. So this is definitely not exactly a composition that I would have expected. I can understand why he brought everything he did. Huron Black is probably a Revenger of some sort, or maybe a Scarf set. Mew, it probably is Defogger. It's very likely to be a Defogger against my team, I would say, but it also could just be a defensive low punny check and pivot. He did not bring the Cofagrius, which is pretty interesting, and that further confirms that this Mew is probably defensive to deal with the Mega Low Punny, and then the Volcanion almost certainly is there to wall the Azumarill. Fortunately for me, I have a lot of things that actually deal with it pretty well, but the fact that he brought it just means I need to play pretty carefully with my Latias to make sure I can wall that. The Snorlax, I'm expecting a Chople Berry 100%, as a Chople Berry would be a great way to lure the likes of a potential superpower Nidoking, the likes of a high jump kick Mega Low Punny, obviously, as well as just general fighting coverage from the rest of my team. So I felt Chople Berry was pretty likely to come, and it's a good sponge for things like Miss Magius if I were to bring that, but fortunately I did not here in this matchup. And then the Gardevoir, really don't know what to expect here for sure, as Gardevoir could do a variety of things. I think it could be his Latias check potentially, if the Snorlax isn't as well, as Gardevoir would resist Latias's dual stab, and can also Wish Pass if that's the kind of set he wants to bring. Scarf Guard is also a pretty decent option for my Mega Low Punny as well. So those are just some things to think about. Mega Heracross pretty obviously is going to be a more offensive set, or could even be bulky with coverage to hit my whole team. I'm not really expecting anything besides coverage moves, as he really does need, I believe, all of his potential coverage. So Rock Blast, Close Combat, Pin Missile, and Bullet Seed to deal with my entire team. So that's what I'm expecting from the Mega Heracross here for sure. The question is its EV spread, as it really could be a variety of things. It could be speedy to outpace really a lot of my team. A sizable portion of my fat stuff can be outpaced by this, but then again, a lot of my fat stuff has the ability to run a lot of speed EVs as well, and as many of you know, that's something I certainly am capable of doing, and might be something I'd try later on if I have a rematch with him in the playoffs. Now, with that said, I'm going to review little bits and pieces about my team. So my Nidoking is a Toxic Spikes variant with a variety of coverage moves that do cover his team very, very well, I would say. And then I have Ferrothorn, which is more or less a defensive pivot around his team. And then I have a Latias, which is really good against his team as well. Don't want to reveal much on that set, or the Ferrothorn, Nidoking, etc. The Electros is a pivot, because that's what Electros does. It is Assault Vest this week, and it has, I believe, let me think about his moveset. It has Super Fang, which is actually really, really nice against him, as being able to wear down his team with Super Fang is really useful for my wall breakers on this team. And then this is a Choice Guard Metagross with Trick, and then a few coverage moves, Meteor Mash, Earthquake, and also had Bullet Punch in this game. So that really does well against his team, especially considering that he did not bring the Thunderous or the Greninja, which were his two of his resists. The only resist he has is the Volcanion, which I can always switch Latias into. So Scarf Metagross definitely could put in a lot of work this game. And then this is a substitute Mega Low Punny with pretty standard coverage moves and ways to deal with the potential Cofagrigus. So obviously that was very vague, and I do apologize for that, but I really do think I need to keep as much private as possible against him, considering the potential playoff rematch, if I'm able to make playoffs this season, of course. So yeah, I apologize for the briefness of that, but let's go ahead and jump on into this so we can see what happened here. So I am going to lead off with my Metagross, as he leads off with Mew. Now, my potential plays here, I could Trick immediately. Okay, that's a play. If I expect him to switch in and go for Stealth Rocks, I could Trick immediately and essentially neuter his most likely only switch into my Mega Low Punny. So that could have been, that could be a very viable play here. The thing is, Scarf Scarf Metagross is so solid against this team offensively that I don't really want to lose my Scarf immediately until I see a little bit more about how the game plays out. So I felt that a very safe switch into this Mew was my Latias, as he can't really do much damage to me with anything, and it kind of lets me scout out his set a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do here, as we will resume, and he actually goes for, I believe, the taunt here on turn 1, just in case I was a Stealth Rocker, so that's a good play on his part. Now here, he has a pretty free switch into his Snorlax or his Gardevoir, so I'm going to pull the switch into my Electros so I can gain some offensive momentum on either of them. Now he decides to go into his Snorlax. Now this is really nice because, one, I most likely outspeed this, as Snorlax is slow as tits, and this is basically a free Super Fang, as nothing on his team obviously is immune to it because he doesn't have a Ghost type on his roster. So Super Fang was definitely the play here, as he actually goes for a return and reveals to be Adamant max attacks, but not Choice Bandit. So expecting him to potentially, expecting him to either go for a Fire Punch, probably a Fire Punch, expecting my Metagross or my Ferrothorn. I decided to go for the knockoff there, just to, of course, get rid of his item in case he has a Chople Berry to allow my Mega Lopunny to be able to more safely approach it later in the game, as he goes for the Crunch, probably expecting my Latias or my Metagross to come in. Now here I'm going to go for the Volt Switch. And let's talk about this damage a little bit. So that's actually kind of strange damage. Definitely a funky EV spread that he brought here this week on this set, as the Volt Switch is actually doing a lot more damage than it would to a max HP or a high HP Snorlax. So this is likely a max attack or nearly max attack and a nearly max defense Snorlax. So definitely a kind of interesting set to see here, but it makes a little bit of sense considering the physical nature of a lot of the mons on my team. So pretty cool prep there for sure, as I'm going to switch into my Nidoking. This might have been considered a misplay in some people's eyes, but I made this play because I know I can take any hit. There's no way in heck he's going for an Earthquake. I don't even think he has Earthquake, considering he has Crunch to hit the Metagross and Return, obviously, to hit the Nidoking. So there's no real reason for him to have Earthquake in this matchup, in my opinion. So I felt that Nidoking was the best switch. I'm not going to be able to the O-Code, and I can get up my Toxic Spikes for free, as once I get up the T-Spikes, that means that his entire team is grounded. He did not bring Thundurus. His entire team is grounded. That means I can wear him down way easier for the likes of my Scarf Metagross and for the likes of my Mega Lopunny. So that was the thought here, and therefore I do go for the T-Spikes on this turn as he stays in. Kind of expected him to maybe try to go for a rest, as he did reveal the Chesto Berry when I knocked it off, but he does just take me out with a Fire Punch, and that is fine, as I do have the Toxic Spike up, and now I feel like I'm actually in a pretty good position as he switches into his Mew, gets poisoned, and reveals the Lumberry. So excellent prep on his part there for sure. He definitely saw the T-Spikes coming, as he should, as they're very good against this team. So that was definitely good on his end. Now here, I feel, because I'm not going to be able to get the T-Spikes up, to keep the T-Spikes up, as the only reason he's Lumberry is if he has Defog. That's guaranteed. This would be probably my best opportunity to neuter this thing, because if this thing is locked into a Choice Scarf, that means it's not a threat whatsoever to really anything on my team, especially considering I don't really expect him to pack coverage for Metagross, especially because he had Taunt, as I would expect his moveset to then be Taunt, Roost, Recover, and then Defog and Psychic, so that he has something to hit Mega Lopunny. That's the most likely set, I believe, at this point in the game. So I felt that Trick was my best play, as being locked into Psychic is not detrimental at all whenever I had the likes of Metagross, Latias, and Ferrothorn to switch into that pretty much freely. So Trick was my play, as he does go for Defog. So unfortunately, he does get rid of the T-Spikes, and I lose Nidoking for essentially no reason. So that's kind of unfortunate, but I do still have the likes of a couple win cons in the back. So here I go for the Earthquake, as it was a pretty safe Earthquake. You can't really do anything when he's locked into Defog with his Mew, as I'm just going to go for Earthquake as he goes into his Volcanion, revealing that he's very, very bulky. In fact, he had a lot of defense investment as well, so that was definitely a counter to my Azumarill. So good prep on his part. That was, I guess, pretty obviously coming, as he kind of needed it for Azumarill, otherwise that kind of destroyed his life. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and switch into my Latias, as it's very free switch into the Volcanion, and he pulls Ace Double into his Heracross. Now let's talk about this a little bit. So on this next play, this next play decides the game, and that's kind of interesting to say on turn 11 when I still have 5 mods and he has 6, but this next play determines the game. So he has no way of knowing my Latias set. I haven't revealed anything about it outside of switching Latias into Mew as he went for Taunt, so that's all I've done. No big deal. If I go for a Life Orb boosted Psychic, if I were a Life Orb set, I'm not going to reveal, if I go for a Life Orb boosted Psychic on this turn, Heracross dies. Okay, Mega Heracross dies. No matter what his bulk investment is, he will die. Unless he's like max HP, max the def, something crazy like that. Okay, that's very unlikely, by the way. It's very likely that he is probably jolly nature to be able to outspeed things like my Metagross. That would make a lot of sense. He needs to be jolly to outpace my Metagross, and if he doesn't, then obviously I can always revenge him with a Zen Headbutt if that were one of my coverage moves. So he's going to be jolly. The question is how much HP, how much bulk is he going to have to be able to take on my team? It really doesn't need that much attack investment to be a threat to my team. I know this, he knows this, that's something I have in mind. He probably has some bulk, but there's no way in heck that he's going to be able to survive Life Orb hits from Latias. So he, in his best interest, he should switch out, probably sacking off his Snorlax, because what's Snorlax doing to my team at this point in the game? Nothing. It's death fodder, and he doesn't have a safe switch into Latias at all. He can consider Gardevoir a safe switch in, potentially, but if I'm a Calm Mind variant, then with enough investment, I actually can 1v1 a Gardevoir. Unless he has the likes of Taunt and I guess a lot of special attack investment. But even so, Gardevoir really isn't the safest switch in directly to Latias in my opinion. But yeah, so even so, there's no way in heck he's staying in here. There's no reason for him to stay in here. So I am going to click Calm Mind as he actually stays in. And he would have lost Heracross on this turn. He would have lost Heracross on this turn. I don't agree with that play. I definitely do not agree with that play. We kind of talked about it after the match. He wants to, of course, maintain the privacy of that play, which I can respect. That's fine. But from my point of view, that made zero sense. Okay, that made no sense at all. If I just clicked my attack to kill him, he would be dead, and he would not have his best breaker to deal with my Ferrothorn and to deal with really my team. Period. As Kyurem Black, sure, that can be a little bit of a threat. Thing is, almost my entire team, my Electros is in range, so almost my entire team is either able to outspeed a non-choice Scarf Kyurem Black or take a hit from a non-choice, from a Kyurem Black, period. And I can do a lot of work to him still with the mons I have left, and I'm very confident in that. Obviously, I don't know all of the sets. I don't know what the Gardevoir is yet. Mew is choice locked, Snorlax is weakened, and Volcanion is hard walled by Latias. So I felt the Heracross was super important to him, and he was willing to sacrifice it to Psychic Stab. So yeah, unfortunately, that's obviously going to be the death of my Latias, and that's pretty bad because now my Volcanion switch-in is Lopunny, and that's obviously not exactly a switch-in. I missed the Meteor Mesh here, but it's a free kill anyways with Earthquake, so that's obviously what I'm going to go for here as I do take out the Snorlax. And now he's going to go into his Volcanion. My play here was thinking that due to the prior damage I got on the Volcanion with my first Earthquake, I either got a very low roll or he is defensive, and I'm like nearly max Fizz Def essentially. And if he were a defensive set with no special attack investment, then my Metagross is nearly guaranteed. The maximum roll is like 100.6%. My Metagross is nearly guaranteed to survive a Flamethrower from a bold Volcanion, and even if he's modest, I still have a good chance to survive as long as he doesn't have actual investment to support that modest nature. So I felt I could survive this, so I do go for 2 Earthquakes here, as he actually takes me out, or I was about to go for another Earthquake, but he does actually take me out with a Flamethrower, so I don't know what his investment is. I can't really say if that mattered or not in terms of if it was a roll or whatever, but I do lose my Metagross here, and now I just go into my Lopunny trying to net a kill, as he doesn't really have a switch in, especially with the Mew being locked into a choice item. As here, my play is to go for Substitute, as if he goes for close combat, I should be able to take him out with a combination of Return and Gyro Ball from the Ferrothorn. As I do just go for the return, as he actually makes a nice play. He goes for Bullet Seed, I guess, just in case I went for sub. So good on him. He doesn't really lose anything by doing so, as there's no way I can 2-hit KO him with anything outside of... I don't even think Lopunny gets a flying move. So yeah, down goes my Lopunny, and now I go into my Ferrothorn. I do, I mean, I can't do anything at this point in the game, as obviously all my remaining Pokemon are going to be taken out by the Mega Heracross. So yeah, we're going to lose this game 4-0, and it goes back to the Lati play, to be honest, as it makes no sense to me why he would do that. He's confident that he has his reasons for making that play, and you know, I guess I'll respect whatever those reasons are, but I disagree with it heavily, and I guess I'll learn more about why he made the play he did after the playoffs are over. That's what he told me, and I'm definitely curious on that, and I hope he actually does tell me why he made that play. But, yep, that cost us the game this week, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, yep, that's that. So, good game, Anthony. That was interesting for sure, but Anthony now is actually the only undefeated team in the league still. He's 4-0, so that's pretty cool. But we're moving down to 2-2, so we started 2-2 again this season, which kind of sucks. Kind of sucks for sure. I think my differential is even at 0 at the moment, as I lost 4-0 to both. Yeah, I lost 4-0 to Merc, I lost 4-0 to Anthony, and then I won 5-0 against Carney and won 3-0 against Danza. So I am even right now. Neutral differential 2-2. So basically we're starting over at week 5. And I might be wrong on this, but I think I'm right in that I am playing the San Antonio Swamperts for week 5, I think. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I think that's right. And that just so happens to be the team that knocked us, well, that beat us the past 2 times we played them. I've actually never beaten them before. So, yeah, let's try not to go 2-3 this season to start it off. That'd be kind of sad for sure, but we'll just kind of see what happens on that. And there's actually the potential that we'll have someone else play that game in Dallas's place. We'll kind of see what happens on that. We're still working out the details. But anyways, yeah, I apologize again for the brevity of this video, not really going into the detail that I normally do. It's just something that I feel like I need to do to maximize my chances in the playoffs if I do get there. So I do apologize for that, but it is what it is. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next week. We'll try to bounce back from this and get back on the winning track. So have a good one. Peace.